You grew up in a house where every room was yours, but none of them felt big enough to hide it. Because when you're the only child, there's nowhere to disappear. There's no sibling pulling focus, no brother starting a fight at dinner, no sister stealing the attention. You are the attention. All of it, all the time. Every report card, every mood, every silence, every bad day, it all lands on you because there's no one else for it to land on. And people think that means you were spoiled. They think only children grew up getting everything they wanted. And yeah, maybe you got the toys, maybe you got the birthday parties, maybe you didn't have to share your stuff. But you shared something much harder. You shared every single emotional moment with adults who had nowhere else to put their feelings except on you. If this is you, stay with me, because the psychology of only children is one of the most misunderstood things I've ever looked into, and almost nothing people believe about you is true. Let's start with the thing everyone gets wrong. Only children are selfish. You've heard this your entire life. You've probably believed it about yourself. There were moments where you thought, maybe I am, maybe I don't know how to share, maybe something's wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with you. Here's what actually happened. You didn't grow up in a system that required negotiation. You didn't fight over the remote, split dessert, or learn to compromise through daily sibling warfare. So yes, certain social reflexes came later for you. But here's what came early. Empathy. The real kind. Not the kind you learn from sharing toys. The kind you learn from being the only emotional mirror in the house. When your mom was sad, you felt it fully, with no sibling to dilute it. When your dad was stressed, you carried the weight of that with no one to look at and whisper, "Is this normal?" Because that's the thing nobody talks about. Only children never get to check. Siblings have this invisible advantage. They can look at each other during a family moment and without saying a word confirm, "Yeah, that was weird," or "No, you're not crazy, I see it too." You never had that. Every confusing thing that happened in your house you processed alone. Every argument you overheard you interpreted alone. Every emotional shift in your parents' mood you decoded alone. And you had no one to cross-reference with. No one to say, "Hey, did that seem off to you?" So you became your own reference point, your own therapist, your own witness. And if this is interesting or a little familiar, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who might relate. Now let's continue. People wonder why only children overthink. You don't overthink because you're anxious. You overthink because you were the only processor in the building. Your brain had to handle every input with zero backup, and it got really, really good at it. Maybe too good. Here's something that only children understand and almost nobody else does. You learned how to be alone before you learned how to be with people. Think about that. Most kids learn socialization first. They're thrown into groups. They figure out friendship through playground fights and making up the next day. They learn people by being surrounded by people. You learned yourself first. You sat in your room and built entire worlds in your head. You talked to yourself, and it wasn't weird, it was necessary. You created imaginary scenarios, imaginary friends, imaginary conversations, because your brain needed interaction, and there was nobody else to interact with. And that's not sad. That's actually extraordinary, because what you built in that silence was a relationship with your own mind that most people never develop. Some people go their entire lives unable to sit alone with their thoughts. You've been doing it since you were 5. But here's where it gets complicated. Because you spent so much time alone, you got comfortable there. Maybe too comfortable. You built a fortress of solitude that works perfectly. And now, as an adult, letting someone in, genuinely in, feels like handing a stranger the keys to a room you've been organizing your entire life. You want connection. You crave it, actually, sometimes more than people who grew up surrounded by siblings, because you know exactly what it feels like to not have it. But wanting it and knowing how to let it happen are two very different skills. Only children are often the best friends you'll ever have once they let you in. They're loyal, they're attentive, they're deeply intentional, because they don't have a roster of 7 siblings to fall back on. When you matter to them, you really matter. But getting past the door, that's the hard part. because the door has been closed for a very long time. And it's closed not because they don't want you there, but because they never learned that someone else in their space could be safe. Let me tell you something else about only children that nobody says out loud: the pressure. When you have siblings, the expectations get distributed. Maybe your brother is the smart one, maybe your sister is the athletic one. The weight gets spread across multiple shoulders. When you're the only child, you are every category. You're the smart one, the athletic one, the creative one, and the successful one. And the one who better not mess up, because there's no backup. There's no second chance walking around the house with a different last name. Your parents' hopes, every single one of them, live in you. Their fears, their unlived dreams, their definition of success, all of it funnels into one person. And you felt that. You felt it at 8 years old when you didn't even know what pressure meant. You just knew that disappointing them felt different than it seemed to feel for your friends. Because your friends had siblings to share the weight with. You carried it alone, like you carried everything else. And here's the part that might hurt the most. You probably parented yourself more than you realized. Only children often develop this strange self-sufficiency where they tuck themselves in, calm themselves down, and solve their own problems. They say, "I'm fine," before anyone even asks, because they learned early that being low maintenance was the safest way to exist in a house where all the focus was already on them. You didn't want more attention. You wanted less, because the attention came with pressure, expectation, and the unspoken understanding that everything rides on you. So you became invisible on purpose, the kid everyone called mature, independent, doesn't need anyone. Sound familiar? You needed people. You just never learned how to need them out loud. But here's what I want you to hear, and I mean really hear. The things that make you different, the way you process alone, the way you overthink, the way you struggle to let people in, the way you carry pressure silently, the way you're fiercely independent but quietly lonely, those aren't flaws. Those are adaptations your brain built because you grew up as the only one in the room. And some of those adaptations are genuinely extraordinary. Your ability to be alone without falling apart, your depth of thought, your emotional intelligence, your loyalty when you finally let someone in, your self-awareness that most people spend decades trying to develop. You had that at 12, not because you were gifted, because you had no choice. The only child didn't grow up spoiled. They grew up solo. And there's a massive difference between getting everything you want and having no one to share it with. You know that difference better than anyone. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who might find it interesting or relatable.